Welcome to this September's edition of Forward Slash. This month we've titled the column, It's Complicated. David and I often think about the new and the old and what has changed in between. And this month we chose to take on complexity. Complexity, that word means different things to different people. If you're an economist, it's a good thing, perhaps, that an economy be complex, that it be sophisticated. If you are a wartime strategist, perhaps complexity is a tool. Perhaps it's something you use to deceive or confuse the enemy. But to the individual who's coping with a complex task or a busy and complex work week, complexity can actually be the enemy itself. We know that code breakers in World War II came up with sophisticated computer models, or they were at least sophisticated for the time, that converted German and Axis powers codes from something indecipherable to something very clear and something very downloadable to the average analyst. They called their computer Colossus. It was a name that they borrowed from the name of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And if you think about it, it simply foreshadowed how reliant upon computers we would all become.
The code breakers at Bletchley Park were able to master complexity through isolation, a technique that seems to be increasingly irrelevant to our work. They were able, through a combination of analysis, creativity, espionage, insight, were able to analyze the code system's operation and reduce their problem of decryption to a relatively small number of cases, and then were able to use the Colossus to march through those cases mechanically. The change that occurred in just a very short period of time is easy to see when we look at the problem of reproducing the Colossus in the 1980s, when Tony Sales and a group of other people tried to rebuild it without the original blueprints, which had been burned because they were top secret. Tony was convinced that it could be rebuilt. He made claims that it could be done easily, and he said nobody believed him. I had the opportunity to talk with him and view the reconstructed machine. And he discussed about how he had to put the entire thing in context. He had to understand how Bletchley Park worked. He had to understand the standards for electronic development of that time. He had to understand how the Office of Post and Telecommunications worked and how their standards for developing equipment influenced the Colossus. And at the end, he began to realize that the Colossus, though it had a series of inventors and engineers, was the product of a wide number of forces. And he had to look at those forces and understand how they worked to shape the final machine. Well, the significance of this was really driven home at a recent conference. I was sitting and talking with a senior professor who had educated 2 or 3 generations of computer scientists. And he noted that in his teaching, he had gone from the offensive to the defensive. That when he started teaching back in the 70s, he was convinced that you could know everything about coding. You could understand the algorithms, you could understand the systems, and make everything work. What's happened is slowly but surely he's gone on the defensive, because you cannot isolate problems completely. You can never be sure that you know that what you are doing is perfect and that it interacts with other parts of the system in perfect ways. What you need to do is build up a defensive strategy to anticipate what could go wrong and be able to handle it in a predictable way. We now program, he said, as if we'll never completely understand anything, and we always need to protect ourselves from the consequences of our failures.
Computers are really the conduits of modern life, and the quantity of information that is transmitted through them and produced upon them simply overwhelming. Without them, we would not have the modern financial and sophisticated models that are the basis of our modern economy. We wouldn't have virtual networks that simply rectify or perhaps solidify or offer opportunities to create new social networks beyond the real or the tangible. Basic computer skills are a necessity of the modern workplace. But through it all, we're producing much more information, certainly. The question is whether or not we are producing information that we can also understand, that we can decipher. Are we producing computers are we producing software that can help us wade through the vast information complexity? It's really not just programmers who feel that they're playing more defense than offense lately. All of the economic indicators are there. If you look at home purchases, if you look at GDP, none of them seem to be growing, but I think there may be a lesson in the story of the early code breakers. They knew that the best defense was a thriving offense. They went on the offensive and created something new to understand the world that they lived in, to take on the task at hand. And I just have to wonder whether or not it's time to play offense again. Thanks for listening to this issue of Forward Slash. You can also find us at the very last page of Computer Magazine, which is a publication of the IEEE. My name is Erin Dumbacher. On behalf of David Allen Greer, we want to thank you for listening. Join us again next month.